having fun isn't hard when you have a library card. In the process of Googling that quote, which I probably last saw on Pinterest about a decade ago, I learned that not only is there an Arthur wiki, but that Arthur's surname is Reed. If you too are a curious person in search of something to read, I highly recommend you use your library card to check out some books about archaeology. Not like I'm biased or anything. I'm very biased. This is an internal conversation I have with myself often. Looking for some suggestions? That's why I'm here. I've put together a list of some books by archaeologists that I personally enjoyed and that I hope you will too. These recommendations aren't in any specific order, but we'll start with books about archaeology in general and then go through books that are more specific in terms of what they cover. Let's start with the history of archaeology as a scientific discipline. How did anybody get started studying the past? And how did the field of archaeology become what it is today? A Little History of Archaeology by Brian Fagan can answer those questions. Each chapter is about the people who shaped archaeology and the sites where they worked. It covers a lot of familiar stories like Howard Carter and the Tomb of Tutankhamun, but it also takes time to highlight the relationship between archaeology and other scientific disciplines like geology, biology, and paleoanthropology as these disciplines developed alongside each other. Okay, so we've got the history of archaeology and the sites we all know and love, but what about some ancient places that don't get as much attention as they deserve? Check out the other ancient civilizations, Decoding Archaeology's Less Celebrated Cultures by Todd DaSilva. This book does exactly what it says on the tin. It will introduce you to cultures and peoples that we don't hear about all the time. This includes the Olmecs, Akkadians, the Jomon, Xiongnu, and others, and that's why I'm genuinely so glad that this book exists. You can also find the author on YouTube with her channel Dig It with Raven, although if you found this video or my channel before being aware of hers, how? Now that we've learned about peoples and cultures all around the world, let's look at the archaeology of something enjoyed by people all over that world: alcohol. Ancient Brews, Rediscovered and Recreated by Patrick McGovern, dips into biomolecular archaeology to find traces of the ingredients used to create fermented beverages in the past at different sites all over the world. Then, the author teamed up with a brewer buddy, and together they indulged in experimental archaeology to recreate these beverages. Each chapter is about a different drink and comes with a suggested food pairing and recipes. Apparently this was a Forbes Best Booze Book of the Year, too. Archaeology is more than digging and lab work, so let's not limit ourselves to kneeling in sediment or hunching over the lab bench. A History of the World in 12 Shipwrecks by David Gibbins dives into underwater archaeology and maritime history, and I am not apologizing for the pun. Each shipwreck tells us so much, not just about the ship and the people and things on it, but about what was going on in the world at the time. 2 of the ships included in this book are on my ever-expanding list of topics to cover in videos. I don't know if it's fun to ask you to guess which ships they are. We visited the trenches and the labs and gone under the sea. Now let's go to space, the final frontier. Let's do satellite archaeology. Archaeology from Space, How the Future Shapes Our Past by Sarah Parcak will introduce you to how we can use satellites to see the traces of the past and the archaeological record from space. But this book is about more than that. It also highlights how we can use this technology to preserve and protect the archaeological record so that future humans can enjoy it too. Let's head back to Earth for some books that are more specific in the people, places, and time periods that they discuss. Everyday Life in the Ice Age, A New Study of Our Ancestors by Elle, Clifford, and Bahn looks at what life was like in Ice Age Europe, and it includes what we've learned from some burials I'd like to discuss in future videos. The Celts, Search for a Civilization by OSU archaeologist Alice Roberts looks at a multicultural civilization that lived across Europe. So, if you want European archaeology that isn't Greece or Rome, this might scratch that itch. It also provides a great example of how the way that we think about and envision the past can change over time as we uncover more in the archaeological record. From the other side of the world, there's Mexico, From the Olmecs to the Aztecs by Marco Ko. As suggested by the title, it covers multiple cultural groups that lived in Mexico over time, though the chapter about the Aztecs is the most detailed. This book does have lots of pretty pictures. The photos and illustrations are gorgeous. For a specific city in Mexico that happens to also be a UNESCO World Heritage Site, there's Palenque, Eternal City of the Maya by David Stuart and George Stuart. It includes 2 chapters about Palenque's most famous ruler, Pakal, and his tomb. Finally, for a specific site and the burials within it, let's jump back over to Europe with the Bone Chests by Kat Jarman. The bone chests in question can be found in Winchester Cathedral in England, and they hold the bones of kings and saints from before and then slightly after the Norman conquest. Over time, these burials have been destroyed and the bones jumbled and mixed together, so anthropologists and archaeologists have started analyzing those skeletal remains to try to make sense of everything. The analyses hadn't been completed when this book was published in 2023, so it's a project on which I would like to follow up, but each chapter looks at a different individual and their place in history. This is only a selection of books from a longer list I created, so I will be listing some extra books in this video's description. I also plan to follow this with a video about books about mummies. I post about these books as well as other books about science on my Instagram, which you can also find listed in the description. Let me know in the comments what your favorite archaeology book is, or what book you recommend, and thank you for watching. Shout out to the 2025 Session 2 Field School in Gdańsk, Poland. I wrote half of this script during card games. We are half a minute in and I'm already fighting with my teleprompter. This is gonna be great.